It's the POPP-Cast. People of Phnom Penh. With me, MC Luke. So today, Phnom Penh, Cambodia. Suk Sabai. I hope everyone is doing great. And welcome back to another POPP-Cast. Here from Phnom Penh, the capital of the Kingdom of Wonder, Cambodia. One of the most fantastic places in the world. And this week we are live for episode 8. Episode 8. Wow, we have come so far. What a journey we've been on. And thank you to everyone who has joined us so far, as always. And thank you to all the guests who have joined me so far. You've all been absolutely incredible. And this week we are joined by someone equally as amazing, Sarah Saunders. And we're going to bring her on stage right now. Hey, Sarah.
Oh, hello. Chomrip Sua le crew.
Sukhsabai.
Just suksbai the.
Oh, bad sukhsabai ako no jak kamai chran na.
Nah, ate bong.
We'll leave it there. How you doing? You okay?
Yeah, I'm good. How are ya?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Yes. Back
Good.
from the gym and feeling energized. How's your morning been?
It's been lovely, productive. It's been great. Can't complain.
Good.
Thanks for
And
having me on the show.
You are more. The pleasure is all mine. No worries at all. Where are you coming live from? You are in Kampot.
I am live from Kampot.
Fantastic. And whereabouts? In the city or just outside the city? Just
No, just outside in Chum Kriel. We live in the village.
Okay, up in Chum Kriel. Okay, shout out to everyone in Chum Kriel. What's up? It's nice little area, nice and quiet, nice and beautiful.
It's lovely.
Nice. Yeah, cool. And how long have you been down there now, Sarah? You've been down there quite a while now. On and off for a while.
Like over a year. Well, this stint, about a year, and then
this stint. Because we met there
2018.
2018. Wow. Oh my.
Time.
Let's see, time flies. We were just young. young backpackers.
But babes in the woods.
Indeed. Well, cool, awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us today here on the POPP-Cast, the people of Phnom Penh. You, of course, you don't live in Phnom Penh, but you have done before for a long time. You were here you're actually my neighbor right above me, just up there. For how long?
2 years at least, maybe a little over.
Yeah, long time. And yes. And how did you find the city? What do you prefer? Kampot, Phnom Penh?
It depends. I mean, Phnom Penh came into my life when I really needed to be in the city. You know, I was trying to get my footing in sort of a more career-oriented path, and those options just aren't really available for expats in Kampot necessarily.
Indeed,
for entry-level things. So moving up to the city was a game changer in so many different ways. So those 2 years were fantastic. However, after that,
well, I think it's that transition that a lot of people once been, because how long have you? I can tell you what. Let's rewind 1 second. How have you been in Asia? How long now? Not just Cambodia. How long in Asia in total? Because I know you've been around the block.
Like 6.5, almost 7 years.
Yep. Okay, and how long in Cambodia? Most of the time here. But you've been around. Like, I know you spent some time in Sri Lanka. You spent
Vietnam.
Thailand.
Yeah.
And you are from originally. Hold up. I'm going to get this. South Carolina.
That's it. South Carolina.
Yes, I got it.
Nailed
it.
Yeah,
South Carolina. Yeah, nailed it. I was going to say, oh God, it was north
of the United States.
Yeah, South Carolina. You are country girl. Country girl. What brings a country girl from the South to Cambodia?
Traveling, really. I mean, doing the whole backpacker, wanting to see the world outside of, not only South Carolina, but outside of the US. And then really, just let's flip the globe around and let's go there. And then doing the whole backpacker circuit that I think a lot of us do. And then, as you end up in certain places, I think a lot of expats in Cambodia specifically fall in love with it. And, you know, it's sort of everyone's origin story, right? What brought you here? I was traveling and then I got stuck,
Wow,
but good stuck, you know? So
yeah, exactly.
here I am
But
6.5 years later.
so you came straight to Cambodia, or you started in, you know,
I
as
started
I
in
always say,
Thailand.
the banana pancake loop.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
started in Thailand, then skipped Cambodia, as you do. Flew to Vietnam, did I don't know, maybe a couple months in Vietnam, and then was sort of at a crossroads. I had a couple friends who were going to Indonesia, and you know, there's sort of this weird sense of like, why do you want to go to Cambodia? You know, like we already did Thailand. You know, we saw temples in Thailand, so we went to beaches in Thailand, so we did all these things. Why Cambodia? And I was just really drawn to it. I mean, I think like my background in political science and the history of Cambodia and everything, I was always really fascinated with it, and I just felt like I would be doing myself a disservice to skip it. And, you know, ultimately, as it has turned out, it was the best decision that I've ever made was to come here.
Well, it always seems, especially back then, and still now, especially back then, back, you know, even when I started traveling, it was always like a stopgap. If you had the time, you'd come. Other than that, you know, still now, sadly, a lot of backpackers skip over it or don't see it as a destination they have to do, which is, you know, which is completely wrong. If anything, it's, you know, way up there at the top of the list of places in the world you have to see. And everyone, of course, I have to ask you the question I ask everyone. So when you got here, what made you fall in love with Cambodia? What was it? I mean, you know,
I
not
imagine you
necessarily
get this
one
a
thing,
lot.
of course. Yeah, it's, you
The
know,
people.
just the people. Exactly.
The people.
Yeah, the people.
I mean, it really is. It's like because you know, I actually did come to Cambodia while I was in Vietnam just to go to Angkor Wat and do all of that, and then went back to Vietnam. So it was a really in and out sort of thing. Didn't even really spend much time in Siem Reap, which back in those days was not as nice as it is today. And so then you know, my perception of Cambodia was very insulated. And so then when I came back and I came basically directly to Kampot, it was a totally different story. And I mean, everybody that I met, I mean, not the expats for sure, a great community, but like the Khmers and just that village mentality and that lifestyle and just the pace of being in a tourist destination, but not at the same time. You know, everyone was actually really integrated together, and it was just
it's got a lovely community down there, Kampot.
So after that, you know, I was like, oh, I want to be a part of this. You know, this feels like home.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we just came back from overseas yesterday, and I mean, just the difference in immigration, coming back to Cambodia, you know, even like immigrations and customs, they're just the nicest people. Yeah, it's just so nice. And coming back in, it really is just always a pleasure. And people are just so nice, and everyone's smiling and everyone's happy. And again, yeah, it is the people. You know, of course, we have Angkor Wat, we have beautiful jungles, we have temples like as far as the eye can see. But yeah, I mean, what it comes down to is the amazing Cambodian people, yeah, and they really truly make it what it is. Which kind of leads into kind of what you do and who you work with. You work pretty much exclusively with Khmer people. In what you do, and if you don't mind me explaining, you work for an NGO called Damnak Tak, which works amongst vulnerable children and youth amongst Cambodia.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, the organization has been around for nearly 30 years now, and it's great. I mean, it's still a very local organization, so. Everything is done really boots on the ground. They've got 3 locations around Cambodia, so it's very different in terms of the types of services that you are providing for people and the needs of the populations. And so getting to be a part of that, you know, you really get to see, I mean, I've gotten to see a side of Cambodia that I never would have, you know, as a backpacker, even as an expat. I mean, you know, being able to get that insight into people's lives has just been, really just very rewarding. Yeah, and mind-blowing, and it really is.
Mind-blowing, yeah. So before we go into kind of like the finer details of like NGO work, your background at university and studies was
political
NGO work?
science
I mean,
for
science?
my for my bachelor's, political science, with like a focus on international relations. So I've always been like really interested in how other people live, what what's their story, what motivates them, so all of these things.
Okay. So after being kind of because I think this is a big question for a lot of people. I mean, you were out here before as a traveler, so you, of course, you were already integrated amongst the communities, and you had local friends, Khmer friends, expat friends who have worked in the industries. And like to people who kind of, the big question is like, how do I get into NGO work, and not necessarily the field that you work in, the youth field. There are so many areas, be it deforestation, be it youth, be it conservation of animals. There's so many, there's so many NGOs over here. To anyone kind of listening, I mean, how would you go about it? I mean, you were lucky enough to be in country, but if someone was overseas and wanted to look into it and kind of has this drive to want to come to Cambodia and help, how do they do it? How do they go about it?
I think honestly, and when you say that too, it's like a really good distinction. How wanting to come over to help. I think one of the big things for me, and one of the advice, pieces of advice that I would give to other people, is honestly like not coming over with an intention of helping, but more of an intention of learning. So you go into it, like it's not, oh, I want to help this community. I want to learn about this community, because Khmer's a very, rightfully so, a very proud people. They're very, self-sufficient, super reliant and resilient and everything. And sure, a lot of these communities, they definitely, they need, additional assistance. But for anybody who wants to come and be of assistance, the best thing you can do is just to come and fly on the wall, observe, see how things are done, learn from the people, and then sort of see how your personal expertise and interests and ability, how does that contribute? How can you contribute more so?
I think a lot of it is, I suppose, not just contribute, but also how can it integrate? Because a lot of the I think a lot of people come over here with the idea of like, oh, I'm going to come over and tell them how to do it. And it's just like, no. That's not how this works. It's not how this works. How do we integrate Western ideas, or even Cambodian ideas, my ideas, into, things that we do as well? How can we work together to make things better? I mean, be it from the industry that I work in, Khmer, how do we work together to make this better and promote it further to a Western audience and a Khmer audience, so they also enjoy the Western aspect to it as well. So again, it's just integration of ideas. It's not like each of us telling us what to do. It's like, how do we do this together so everyone understands?
Exactly. And I think that's a super good point too, that there's a huge problem. I've mostly worked in Cambodia, so I'm only speaking from that perspective, but I know it happens in a lot of other places as well, where, you have these foreigners come over who maybe do have a little more specialization in certain fields. And they come and they, help these NGOs and they set up these things. But there's not this transfer of knowledge, or this exchange, really. That's a better word for it. This exchange of knowledge. And so then they leave. And so then you don't really have anything left over. So you have this void where, that work can't continue. And it's not that, the Khmer organization isn't capable of doing the work. It's just that this exchange hasn't been facilitated. And then there is sort of this reliance on sort of, okay, well, maybe we do need foreigners to come and do this work, which is completely not at all the case.
It's not right. Exactly. It's,
I think it's really important.
I like back in June, remember I ran back in June.
Yeah.
I ran like 350K and I built well. Super proud.
Should be.
But I think this ties in perfectly because it wasn't just the money that we raised, built the well. It educated 3 or 4 people, I forget how many people in the community, to maintain the well, and that education can be passed down. So it should last, hopefully, fingers crossed, generations rather than just, the next 20, 30 years. So again,
Yeah.
as you just said so astutely, it's not just be like, hey, here's the information, bye. It's it's just like, hey, come on, let's teach you this so you know how to teach the next generation. So look, in an ideal world, there wouldn't be NGOs,
Yeah, of course. But unfortunately, considering the historical circumstances of Cambodia, like there is that information loss and there is that generation gap where that knowledge wasn't passed down in the same way that it has been in neighboring countries. And I think that there is this stigma against Cambodia from a lot of, like an international perspective, as like, they just always need this help and everything. But really it's just about that working together. We've done like a few, I think you were even here in Kampot doing, a lot of the recycling stuff. You go out, trash pickups, great example. You go out with your trash bags and a bunch of barangs are out there with the trash bags and picking up trash, and the Khmer people initially like, what are you guys doing? And then slow and steady, they're like, oh, okay. And the next thing you know, you have kids coming up with, oh, here's some plastic, here's this, or you say, oh, no, like, that's not, that can be recycled. And like, so it's not like, it doesn't take long. It's like an afternoon,
because you were crushing glass.
Yeah, taking glass and trying to make sustainable bricks was how I got my initial start here.
I forgot about that. That was with Joe and Bib.
That's right. Shout out to Joe Beazle and Bib Sopal. The two guys who I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them, to be honest.
And what a cool thing that was such a such a great initiative.
Project. Yeah,
it was an amazing project. Yeah, and it's a shame. I mean, look, they took their own parts in life, and life happens. But no, it was a great initiative. That was super cool. But yeah, shout out to Joe and Bib, a couple of legends.
Yeah,
we miss you.
They are.
So now, how long have you been with the organization? I know you've been.
I've been working with them about 3 years now.
Yeah, 3 years.
I'm
gonna say at least a year, right?
Yeah. No, I think it's more like 3. Worked for another international organization sort of in between for a short period of time. So sort of got the 2 sides of it, right? Because there is, the NGO community, especially in Cambodia, we've got one of the highest densities of NGOs operating in any country in the world. So, and there's a really, I think, a really drastic difference between the local NGOs and the international NGOs. So I've got to see sort of, both sides of it. And obviously both are, here trying to do amazing work. So exactly. So there's really no wrong way about it, really. But for me personally, I definitely prefer working with the local organization. But again, right, I like that sort of being in the thick of it, boots on the ground mentality.
Yeah, for sure. Because I think, I did a little bit of research, didn't I? I don't. I'm not like Rogan. I don't have a Jamie, so I can't just pull things up. Little Jamie, just bring up what you were there. Because they were established in it, right? They were 97. They were established.
97.
So yeah, that's a long time, and from the information on the site, which you can find. I'll put in a link in the comments. They've literally helped thousands upon thousands of youth, and not just youth, also the disabled community here in Cambodia, which I think is a very important to think about. And it's not, of course, not just who does this. There's many organizations that do this, or people are now starting to educate the country more so on disabilities, because again, there was a complete lost generation, and this education gap was very real. And it's disability support that you guys work in as well. And I also have other friends in NGOs who work in these areas. Also, like things like autism are being recognized now more so here in the kingdom. So which is amazing. Also, but it's not just that the organization does this in general. Like, you're a mobile team, like, you're boots on the ground.
Yeah.
You,
so that's a really so they are, well, for this organization, they operate in 3 different provinces, and so I've got to travel. I think just in my overall NGO experience work, I've traveled to, I don't know, maybe like 5 provinces in Cambodia, the rural provinces outside of Phnom Penh, obviously, to really work a lot with the outreach teams. I mean, that's a big part of I work in communications. So a lot of my job is going out and, taking photos and videos and doing interviews with the people who are receiving services, and doing interviews with the staff who are out there, day in, day out, 7 days a week, helping everybody. And again, right, it's not just, setting up a soup kitchen, and people come by. I mean, it's really like a door to door. What do you need? How can we help you? And it's really a personalized approach, which is, it's honestly, it's incredible, the work that they do. I mean it's so much dedication to it.
One picture, I'm going to bring up here, which is, first of all, you obviously boots on the ground, here with a couple of the kids. Whereabouts was this taken?
That was in one of the provinces outside Phnom Penh. On the beach. Yeah.
On the beach. Yeah, but people just remember, Phnom Penh has beaches. You can go to the beaches outside Phnom Penh. And these kids are in like one of the outreach programs, I assume.
Yeah. So they've been with the organization, for a while.
Okay, awesome. And this one, I think, kind of, if a picture can speak 1,000 words, this one kind of says it all.
Yeah, this was favorite is definitely not the correct word to use here. One of the most challenging, but ultimately, fulfilling in a way. And I can explain the whole situation. This is in POPP-Cast. So there's a massive landfill outside of POPP-Cast that has a couple of permanent communities who live around it. So I went out there and spent a couple of days, not staying out there, but commuting in and out, interviewing people, and just sort of observing how life is out there. And I think that that's one of the things that for me was it's very challenging, but also it was very rewarding in my job, just to be able to, a lot of it you have to it's a lot of empathy, but you have to make sure that you're still being kind of objective about things, right? Like these are people's lives,
and that's what they're used to,
and they're out there, and they're doing this, and this is their livelihood, and there's dignity in that. So the fact that we see this image and it's shocking, and it is, and it was a very challenging experience, being able to speak to people. I learned so much, and ended up having these lovely conversations with families who have lived there for years, and have been able to make things work, and in some ways prefer doing that than the alternative, which is having to migrate to Thailand, or leave your families, or work in more, if you can believe it, more unsafe conditions,
some of
in more exploitative conditions. So
I think, to give some people some kind of scope who are listening, about these people who live on these landfills, it's not like they're sleeping in rubbish. They've built themselves homes on the landfills, like out of things they found on the landfills.
Which again, yeah, we shouldn't
It's not.
minimize
We shouldn't.
the extent to how,
I know. I just
yeah.
want to give people an idea. How resilient these people are.
Yeah, for sure.
And yeah, I mean, and with this, I mean, I think the three things that hit home with not just Done Like That, but also a lot of organizations who kind of use this same kind of process, shelter, rehabilitation, reintegration, and how do we close this gap between these communities and these generations and do this shelter, rehab, reintegration? How do we do it, and and what's the plan? I mean, general.
Yeah. Well, I think, it's a really complicated issue, because, I mean, there's so many different factors at play, and everybody has an individual situation, and their own story that sort of, you know, leads them to being in a situation where they need shelter, rehabilitation, and everything like that. It's not a cookie cutter process. And I
No.
think that that's something that can sometimes get lost in the international community, is thinking, right, this idea, right, what's the game plan, how do we go about this? And unfortunately, there isn't a one size fits all way to go about it, and that can be really frustrating, I think, for international donors or international organizations who are looking in from afar with the best of intentions of trying to help, and they don't see the progress in terms of like the volume or the speed that they want to see. They don't necessarily see the small baby steps happening. And it is a slow process because,
the difference of being, boots on the ground and, watching from afar,
Well, and it's hard to explain that as well. And I think one of the big things, that I always tried to work on was this, balance really of, not going too far into what's called, poverty porn, if you've heard that.
Yep. No. Yeah, exactly.
So I guess maybe for people
like having,
who don't know,
Liam Neeson being like, you got to donate to Yemen and watch
even
Taken
worse
3.
is
it's just like,
the
come
kids
on,
with the
don't shove that
flies on
down
their
the throat.
faces,
Yeah, exactly.
and like,
exactly.
at the dump site, for instance, like there's no people in that. It's just, and you do see, sort of the silhouette of a person. But, I think that it's really important to show that, yes, this is the reality. And of course, if people had their choice, they wouldn't necessarily want to be living around a dump site. But, to be able to also, this is still their home and their community. So you can't just pluck people out and reintegrate, take them into another situation and think
sometimes
that's
it causes
helping.
more problems than, you think it causes more problems than you think you're preventing by doing this. And it doesn't work. I mean, if you look at this throughout history, once you displace people and put them in different places, it doesn't quite work out.
Exactly.
So it's
and I
just,
think,
but how do you go about it humanely? And humanely is a horrible word.
Well,
how do you go about it, intelligently, I suppose,
Yeah, I think it's sustainably is a good way of going about it. Is I mean, it's especially, let's take, for example, children in situations of domestic violence, for instance, and they're in family structures, they're living at home, but perhaps home has become unsafe. And maybe it's just because, caregiver has lost a job, and, the cycle of poverty and everything that comes with that has, taken a toll in different ways. And now they're experiencing domestic violence. It might not be a permanent situation, but temporarily for the child, the best thing might be to remove them from that environment and then, figure out, okay, how do we get this family back on track? But I think in a lot of situations right now, especially in the international community, there is this big push towards foster and community-based care and kinship-based care, which is fantastic. And it is, proven to be the most efficient way for children to grow up, is within a community-based or a kinship, ideally family-based care. But sometimes, especially in places like Cambodia, it's not feasible. It's not the safest option, at least at the time. And so I think it's really difficult to be able to explain that to people who are used to, hearing the word orphanage, which, has this horrible connotation, and of course these horrific examples all over. And so I think that's the big thing, is basically creating a structure of temporary, supported living for kids that as closely resembles a family structure as possible. Giving them, and I think that's the real key there is, it's never going to be as good as, your actual family. But I mean, if it's necessary, and if it's the best thing for,
I mean, if it's going to make a positive impact either now or in the future, I think in everyone's life, everyone has that teacher they remember from school. Everyone has that, that friend from childhood that maybe they don't speak to anymore, but something at one point in your life had such a huge impact that it's going to really affect your future in one way or another. And I mean, back to, the work that you do, the approach, which I find interesting and which I really love, that a lot of NGOs are taking this on board nowadays, is more of a, like, as you were saying, it's a holistic approach. It's not just doing this.
No, exactly.
It's case by case, it's step by step.
And I think the big thing too is, working on, like you said, this reintegration. I mean, that is the ultimate goal, is reintegrating people back into families. And the way to do that, is not necessarily only by working with children, right? Children are children, right? They should be focused on going to school and being kids and not having to worry about these kinds of things.
Not having to worry about these things,
I think a lot of the good shift that's happened in the NGO sector is switching to trying to help families become more stable and trying to help communities become more resilient. If there's a family member who's lost his or her job and they can't support themselves anymore. Okay, what do you need to get back on your feet? Is it vocational training? Is it, maybe it's direct assistance? Maybe you literally just need rice. Maybe you need your mobile data topped up. Maybe you need a bicycle to get to. It can be
as things as simple as this. No, exactly.
But I think it's hard to show those sorts of things, the impact that makes. Everybody wants to give, a school book and a backpack, which are fantastic, and they do. Anything alleviates the burden, but
make a difference.
But these less visible actions are so
amazing how much more
cycle.
Impact a big sack of rice makes.
Yeah, exactly. These training sessions and things like that. So. I think that's really been very interesting and very cool to work with, is to see how these different strategies get put into place.
These training sessions, I mean, I think we've got you doing fantastic here now. You being fantastic. These are training sessions you're talking about.
Well, this would be a bit different. So this was part of a workshop that I participated in. That was really a super cool experience with a bunch of different NGOs. I think there were maybe like 30 or 40 of us who all came together basically not figured out, but the whole goal was to try and see how can NGOs coordinate together. Cambodia, there's so many NGOs that there is a problem with people. Everyone needs money. So you're applying for basically the same grants and you're kind of competing against yourselves for it. So the idea was like, how do we come together and create these sort of networks that are able to pool resources and pool, support systems and services to be able to reach more people and get the specialized support to the communities that need it most. So that was in Phnom Penh. And then basically that kind of trickles down then,
Is this the same one? Sorry, is this the same event?
Yeah, that's the same event. So it was, also online. So there were a lot more participants that are in the room.
For sure. And then we have this one also, you being looking very, very like late, looking like boss. Is this the same, also the same event?
No, this was a different event. This was a working group that we had that maybe about 6 or 7 of us, different NGOs, the representatives from different NGOs Just trying to sort of brainstorm ideas based off of our common shared goals, values, missions, everything like that. What can we do? How can we network? And ideally, right, I think one of the great things would be for these networks to be able to apply for some, joint grants and be able to sort of collectivize like that. Because there is, I mean, it takes a lot to run an NGO. Exactly,
money.
It is.
Money makes the world go round at the end of the day, and
unfortunately,
there's a lot of things to be done, and there's a lot of good to be done still, and hopefully, people like yourselves and that and these other NGOs, and a massive shout out, one that's very close to my heart, Apopo, the hero rats, which are just incredible,
amazing,
clearing landmines, rats the size of cats, doing amazing things as well. And these grants are so important to keep these things going, and again, if we can keep them going, then hopefully in the future the education will be passed down, and we, I hate to say it, we won't need people like you, Sarah.
Honestly, I mean, I think that all the time, that, if I'm doing my job right, then I'll be out of a job in 5 years, so like,
right? No, exactly.
that's kind of the correct idea. And I think that a lot of people, I think the NGO world has a bad reputation, and of course there are examples where this has been unfortunately proved true. I mean, this, where the money that goes to NGOs doesn't necessarily go directly to the people themselves. But I think one thing that's really important that people kind of, don't always take into account is that you need to have personnel to distribute goods, to run training sessions. You need specialized people to train lower level people how to build their capacity. So, allocating money for staff to get good staff. I mean, I know, especially working, for instance, in disability, Cambodia has one of the lowest ratios of specialists and just physicians straight up to, people in the world. And so to find specialists who are willing to work in the public sector for considerable less money than they would make in the private sector, and teach other people. And, they might not necessarily even be practicing their craft on a day-to-day basis. It might be more on a training situation, but that's so important. And you need money to run these trainings. You need money to recruit these people in.
Pass down this information, and education costs money. And, and sadly, it's just at this point in the time in the world, for some reason, the world just seems to be cutting costs on education, the most important thing in the world.
There's a whole
different podcast,
The world is struggling economically. We know that, and we know that there's so many places that need help.
They're too busy investing in. God, let's not even go there. I suppose my last thing that I kind of have to ask, which I think is a big question for everyone, really, when it comes to, like we've said, like handing down the education, but also working amongst these communities, and anyone who wants to be working in the sector, or those who already work in the sector and want to kind of move to a different area, or just whatever. Like, how do you deal with the longevity of what you're doing, and how do you build the trust? Say you go into a new area that you've never been before. Like, how do you build this trust, and how do you ensure the longevity is there? That it's, do you know kind of right away, or does it take? Sometimes it's like, bang, cool, 1 week, like they're in, or sometimes it's just like, no, we don't want you here, like, go away.
I think it's really case dependent. The majority of the places that I have been in, they're not new recipients of NGO support. And I think a lot of Cambodians just kind of across the board are very familiar with NGOs. And I think that there is already an established level of trust of NGOs. So I think that in and of itself, being an NGO and going to do these things and helping people, I mean, it's pretty immediate to be able to see the difference. So I think building trust in the community that way, it doesn't take that much time, because once people start seeing results, then word of mouth passes. And, as long as you don't, lose that reputation, as long as you maintain a high standard, and as long as you keep the dignity of people and respect what they need, then that, kind of takes care of itself. As an, foreigner going into communities, it's a little bit different, and I've never really felt that much pushback. I think for me, it's more internal. It's not necessarily from the communities themselves. It's more about
Imposter
building
syndrome.
trust. Yeah, a little bit it is. Yeah. And building trust, they, like you said, we were talking about these outreach community, or the staff who are going into communities 7 days a week, right?
Like your
all of these
mobile
people,
teams.
they know them, and they have a good rapport.
They fostered relationships, and
they don't know me. So I'm coming in, and I'm trying to get stories. I want to hear people. I want to interview. I want to take photos and everything. But of course, you can't just come in, with a tape recorder and camera, or just your iPhone. I guess these days, not tape recorder.
Exactly. You're not Hunter S. Thompson with the Hell's Angels.
But I think the big thing is just is stepping back. Stepping back and realizing that it's their community, and I am but a guest, and just being so gracious to be allowed into that community, and being really just take a pause, take a beat anytime you kind of feel uncomfortable. That's it's good. It's a learning experience. It's teaching you something. It's showing you that you're outside of your comfort zone, and maybe you don't have all the answers, and maybe you should listen to the people who you're there to speak to. And I think for me, that, and learning a little bit of Khmer, even just having a little introduction, even if it's terrible, you laugh,
goes a long way.
They laugh,
it really goes
everybody laughs. Next thing you know, you've built this sort of,
I know.
You've lowered the power dynamics. I
can only imagine how many Khmer people are going to laugh at our small bit of Cambodian at the beginning, and the small bit of our Khmer at the beginning. It was like,
so we have to add that in.
How they pronounce Susadai is just hilarious.
But that's it. But it really is so important, to just do those little bits, and just kind of, I don't know your place, I guess, a bit, right? You were here.
No, exactly. As you said perfectly, we are nothing but guests in this country, and
we're lucky
what a privilege it is to be
experience.
A guest here. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. It's that's it. So
an amazing part of the world that everyone should experience in one way or another, be it through what you're doing, through NGO work, boots on the ground, actually getting involved in these communities, or, like many of the people I've spoke to on the podcast so far, I think in a way, everyone's giving back in one way or another, or, learning from Cambodia, because, you can learn so much from being here. Where I think a lot of people, especially in the NGO field as well, you probably feel, as you mentioned earlier, actually, you end up learning so much more about, this is not how I should be doing things, or this is not how I should be, living my life. I should maybe take a leaf out of Cambodia's book, and maybe not stress so much, just understand,
take a breath. Have a 2-hour lunch break.
Have a 2-hour lunch. It's amazing.
Have that extra
30
coffee.
holidays a year. It's
just
okay.
Take them.
It's good.
And I think, it is important. And I just would say that, for anybody who does want to get into this field, that it is important to think, though, about your impact on the community. I think especially when you're working around particularly kids, especially vulnerable kids who have, had these transient adults and haven't had these, very strong, stable adult relationships throughout their life. I get asked a lot from, especially, travelers and tourists, I want to help, I want to give back, I want to go, teach at a school or do this or that, which is great. And that initiative is fantastic. And that mentality is great. But I think it's also important to really think about how that's going to impact the people that you're working with. If you form these bonds, particularly with kids, and then you disappear, just always be conscious about how your impact, regardless of how beautiful and well thought out it is, how it's going to impact the communities that you're working with. And so I think projects like yours, for instance,
remain positive as you are
exactly.
here. Remain positive. because
yeah.
it's heavy work that you do, and a lot of NGOs. It's really, really, really heavy work, and I have nothing but respect for anyone who works in any field of NGO, be it your field or even conservation of animals, or literally the NGOs who are still searching and hunting through the grounds of ancient Angkor to discover these new things. It's a lot of respect to anyone in any of the fields, and you're all doing fantastic things, so thank you.
I mean,
really.
And I mean, really, like all the thanks goes to, I mean, the Khmer staff who are out there every single day doing it, and I mean that they are really the inspiration for everything. So if you know anybody, just give them a thank you.
Anyone listening who's working in the fields, thank you so much. Like, you're all amazing. Be you, Barang, but especially all the Cambodians who give up so much of their time, and a lot of them don't have much time because they're working full-time jobs on the other side and doing this work in their spare time. So yeah, I mean, I think these people are also forgotten. So yeah, again, a massive shout out to them, and a massive shout out to everyone in the NGO community, not only in Cambodia but all across the world, and all the amazing things that you do. And also to you, Sarah, for not only what you do but for joining us today on the POPP.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a great conversation.
And,
I love that.
I hope everyone's enjoyed the conversation today and learn a little bit, because I have, because
good.
Every day is a school day. Thank you so much, mate, and hopefully I'll catch you in the next couple of weeks, next time I'm down in the Kampot.
Absolutely.
I want to come and chill on the river. I want to go and just chill on the river. What's that? Your
come
cat?
Down, do it.
Oh, that's
can you hear my cat? That's
She's like, I can hear you're finished. I'm ready to eat. All right.
Exactly.
All right, mate. Well, I'll speak to you soon. Again, a massive thank you, and all the information that you've given, I'll leave as much in the comments for everyone to see. And again, a huge thank you.
Thanks so much.
I'll see you soon. Have a good one.
All right. Bye, mate.
Bye, mate. Again, guys, thank you to everyone. Again, thank you to Sarah for joining us this week on the POPP-Cast, episode 8. Wow, how far we've come. I'll see you all next week with another very interesting guest who well, we have to wait and see. I'm not going to ruin it now, am I? Then you might not listen. But anyway, I'll see you all next week. Thank you so much. Okun Shran Li Hai Samang Lo Hang Hang Kiom Sro Lang Cambodia.